to 5 minutes each to speak. That is more than the usual 3 minutes given by most councils or panels, and I think it's better to give a set period rather than allow indiscriminate extensions. So I do enforce that period quite strictly. I know where there's multiple speakers for applicants, there's a total of 15 minutes if needed, but I'd ask that individual speakers keep to their 5 minutes. As mentioned before, the panel may have questions from speakers at the end of your address. I'd ask that mobile phones be turned on silent and that each speaker be heard in silence when they're addressing the panel. As mentioned before, also, if you can keep your microphone on mute up until you're addressing us, that just helps stop the feedback. Importantly, and very importantly, there's to be no personal criticism directed at council staff, other speakers, the panel, or people who aren't here. Matthew, you might be on. People that might be on mute. Lisa, I think you might be one. If Pete will be just mute. Thanks. I'm just getting a bit of feedback, that's all.
Yes, I'll fix that up. Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. So importantly, as I mentioned, there's to be no personal criticism directed to council staff, other speakers, the panel of people who aren't here. Please be aware it's a public meeting, but it's also being recorded and published, and you're responsible for your own comments. And please don't try and go into the area of making slanderous comments. And also, if you can avoid trying to denigrate others in an attempt to win a perceived argument. It's also not a question and answer session. So while some people's style of presentation may be to pose questions to the panel, they won't be answered. We'll just take any questions you pose to us as reflecting an issue of concern, as opposed to a question where we'll answer. We're happy to hear from your views, and we do want to hear them, but it won't be that question and answer format. Similarly, it's not a town hall debate, and so I'd ask that you don't interject as I requested previously or interrupt other speakers. And once you've had your speech and there's been questions, that's the end of your address to us. And we'd further ask that courtesy and respect be shown throughout the meeting. As mentioned, after we hear from people, we will close the meeting in order to deliberate on the items and make a decision. The decision that the panel does make will include reasons for the decision, and the decisions and the reasons, as well as the audio recording, will be available on Council's website as soon as practicable, usually within days of the meeting. Decisions of the panel are by majority vote, and as there's an even number, the chair does have a casting vote if needed. Applications will either be approved, refused, or deferred. It's possible the panel may make a different decision than recommended by council staff. If the matter is deferred, it's also possible the panel may subsequently determine an application by electronic means without another meeting, a public meeting. So hopefully all of that's clear. Just before inviting the first speaker on Brady's Gully Road, I'll just ask council staff if there's any amendments to the recommendations or other matters that wishes to raise before we start. I don't understand there is, but I'll just pause in case.
All good.
No, okay, thank you. All right, in that case, we'll move to 40 Brady's Gully Road. And Matthew Wales, I understand you'll want to be the primary presenter, and you have Anthony Kelly, the architect, here as well. Is that right? Okay, you've done a very good job of putting yourself on mute, but you might need to unmute yourself now. Thanks. Over to you when you're ready, Mr. Wales.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the opportunity to address the panel in relation to the Brady's Gully application. As detailed in the report before you today, this application has had a lengthy assessment process involving numerous design adjustments and consultations with council's planning staff and council's in-house architect, with a view to resolving a number of the key design issues. It's acknowledged that considerable leeway has been provided by council in this application in addressing the design and the compliance issues. And it's also acknowledged that there were several requests being made to withdraw the application whilst some of these matters were being attended to, and we acknowledge that there was a deadline on the 9th of June provided by the council. However, amended plans were belatedly lodged with the council on the 12th of June this year, at which time the council did advise us that there were no further extensions to be provided. Additional supporting documentation was subsequently uploaded to the New South Wales Planning Portal. However, this office was advised that the matter had already been recommended for refusal, and hence the report before the planning panel today. I have reviewed the reasons for refusal in detail and simply note that each of the matters that have been itemised in the LPP report have actually subsequently been addressed in the documentation that was uploaded to the New South Wales Planning Portal. I see little value in addressing each of these items today, as it is our view that the amended plans and the supporting documents did satisfactorily demonstrate compliance with both the SEP provisions and the Council's DCP controls. It is also noted that the recent changes to the SEP in relation to the maximum building height did in actual fact resolve the non-compliance in the original design. Our request today to the panel is simply to seek a deferral of this matter so that Council can assess the amended plans and the supporting documents that were belatedly lodged through the portal, which we believe will actually address the concerns that are listed in the recommendation before you today. So I won't take any more of the panel's time, Mr. Chairman. That's our position, and we would like the panel to consider a deferral so that that supporting documentation can be reviewed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wales. Is there anything Mr. Kelly wishes to add, or are you here to ask questions? I think you're on mute, Mr. Kelly, but if I'm just checking in if you wanted to raise say anything, or you just want to.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
you.
Okay, panel members, I'll ask if there's any questions. If there are, just got to put yourself on mute.
Mr. Wales, just three very quick questions. Based on those amended plans that you've submitted, what was the resultant FSR, maximum height and side setbacks?
The side setbacks were adjusted in some cases. The FSR was compliant, and based on the new SEP provisions, we were under the required 9.5 metres. So there was no further need for a clause 4.6 variation to height. The revisions to the SEP actually assisted us in the application, and that was reflected in the amended Statement of Environmental Effects that was lodged up onto the portal.
On the western boundary, the plans that we have had a 3.5 metre setback with a partial encroachment of the basement car park and the service room. Within that, what was the amended plans you're referring to? What was this western setback?
Perhaps Mr. Kelly might be able to just refer to that as the architect.
Yeah,
Anthony?
so we brought it all within the 3.5 metres on the western boundary.
So it's still a 3.5 metre, not a 6 metre.
That's right. It's 6 metres on the eastern boundary.
Right. Okay. I'm just looking here at what the key issues were that the council have outlined.
Yeah.
So
Floor-space, height, non-compliance with the ADG setback of 6 metres, which was a 42% variation. I'm assuming that 6 metres applies to the western boundary as well. Is that correct?
well, we were the 3.5 on this boundary.
No, I know you're at 3.5.
Yeah.
But isn't 6 the required setback?
That was my understanding as well. Is that what council staff was saying? Is my understanding what the council staff position is too?
It's got that in the report. It talks about 6 metres and a 42% non-compliant. I'm not trying to catch anyone out. I'm just going back on what Mr. Wales said, that the amended plans submitted were fully compliant. And now I'm looking at the report. There's a couple of other questions there, but I'm not going to go into that at this stage. But So I understand that
Yeah.
FSR now is, what is the maximum? What is the FSR? I've been told it complies, but what is it? Is it 0.5 or is it less than that?
0.5, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
at 0.5.
0.5 to 1. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the maximum height?
Is under the 9.5 metres, so we are compliant.
Right. Okay. So it's just the setback.
Just the setback on that boundary.
And we're 3.5 on that side to those corners.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But can I just ask a clarification? Thanks, Mr. Ryan, for that question. But just on the height, though, isn't it lodged under the previous step? So the savings provisions mean that's why it's been assessed as the 8 metres to the ceiling as opposed to the new SEP provisions. So
Yeah, it's
in order to gain the new SEP provisions, you'd have to lodge a new DA and have it lodged under those controls. Is that's my understanding how it works, or is it no savings provisions? Is that what you're saying?
I understood there weren't any savings provisions.
Right. Is that right? Can I ask council staff if that's their understanding?
We brought it in under the 8.5, Matthew.
Sorry, Anthony.
So we're at 8.5 metre height plane.
Yes, we are. Yes, correct.
I'd have to have a quick look about the savings provisions for that one.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but just usual. I mean, again, I'm just like Mike Ryan, I'm not trying to catch you up, but my understanding usually is that when applications are made, the controls that apply at the time, there's a ceiling height as opposed to a total height. The new SEP might have changed, but probably being assessed. It'll still need to be assessed under the previous one, unless there's no savings, which is unusual. And then you might need it, but it's probable you'd need a 4.6, I think.
Yeah. So we're
okay,
at 8.5.
Yeah.
I thought it was 8, wasn't 8 to the ceiling, and you're 8.5. Anyway, other questions?
That is correct. Yes, 8 metres to the ceiling, which is in these amended drawings.
Right.
Yeah.
Other questions from the panel?
None from me, just.
None from Glenn Watts, none from Stacey.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just point of clarification. The what's the height of the building at the rear? I know one of the requirements was that it had to be
The 25% story.
Yeah, 25% at single story, and it was shown as 2-story. Is that still proposed?
Yes, it's still proposed at 2 stories. Yes.
Right,
So you haven't
okay.
changed the alignment. I think in the report that, you'd had a bit of a dog leg thing. The council staff, I think, interpreted it correctly to say 25% measured from both side boundaries. So I'm sort of interested in this line of questioning too. It's just ground truthing your comments that you've met all the concerns raised by council staff, just trying to find out where you're at with any new plans. And we don't have those before us or an assessment of them.
Yeah.
Trying to get a sense of it.
So we've indicated on our drawings that 1 story, 25% of the side area, that rear elevation.
So it's 25. You've used 25% of the side area as opposed to 25% linear meterage measured on the side boundaries, like in the council staff. Is that right? You've maintained that position?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Can I just ask about that? Look, I'm a bit concerned about, it wasn't much of an issue in the council staff report, but I think there's 15,000 cubic metres of cut and fill, and I couldn't see in the documentation a cut and fill diagram, but it's sort of it's a site that slopes away from the street, so you're chasing your tail a little bit in, putting a basement car park. And I understand the thinking behind that, but it is quite a lot of cut and fill in a site on a slope for aged housing. What do you say about that? Quite a bit of excavation and sort of the objectives or the future character statement is talk about working with site slope.
Well, the primary reason for this design was to ensure that we could meet the car parking requirements, and of the obvious decision for us was to contain that within a basement area, together with the waste disposal. We thought it was a very practical design solution. We got the waste truck to work correctly. It kept all of those services out of sight and allowed the balance of the property to be landscaped with communal and passive areas. We just thought it was a better outcome for the site, and also to ensure that the development integrated into the streetscape rather than having sort of extensive areas of ground floor parking or ground level parking.
And accessibility was a driver too throughout the site.
Right.
Yes, correct.
It's just a lot, isn't it? 15,000. I said, so 20 cubes in a hopper truck and 700 truck movements just getting the earth out. It's just a lot. Anyway. But your response is to meet the car parking, to meet the density you were previously proposing, which was over, and try to get it level for the parking and the lifts. Right.
Yeah, correct.
And your total number of lifts, because I was just also interested in the distances of travel. You've got one to the rear, one to the front. Is that right? So what's the sort of maximum travel distance for all the people who have to be in these homes to go from a lift to a unit of living? I'm not trying to, maybe just leave that as a comment. You know, I guess there's interest in my point of view in the people getting around the site who are not young.
Anthony, do you have a travel distance there?
Oh, you're just on mute, Mr. Kelly.
I do on file, have to go through it, but we centrally located both lifts in between all, so that was reduction in travel distance.
Right.
And it needed to also connect to the car park below safely.
Yeah.
And the other reason for the lift sitting there is it's near open areas as well for congregating nodes so that they can meet and socialise.
Yep. Okay. All right, I'll just check if there's any last questions. But in summary, your request, we've heard you, is to defer it because you think the issues are resolvable, and they're resolved, at least to your mind, in the revised plans and information you've submitted. We'll consider that. Thank you.
Thanks,
Mr. Chairman. Your request. Thank you. We'll then move on to the next item, which is 23 Bangalow Street at Long Beach, dual occupancy, and I think we've just got Matthew Wales to address us on that. You're up again.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'll be very brief. Obviously, we were disappointed with the recommendation. We felt the design as proposed was of a particularly high quality, and we also viewed that the variations to the standards were reasonable. We understand that the council had worked with us to resolve a number of key changes that address their earlier concerns, particularly in relation to overlooking, solar access, variation to the FSR, and removal of the previously proposed roof terraces. The amended design sought to address these concerns and provide some mitigating arguments, including the FSR variation, which currently is at 9.8%. This resulted in what we believe to be a much better outcome for the site, certainly a better outcome than a development that fully complied with council's controls. But yet council is unsatisfied with the FSR variation on environmental grounds, although we do remain of a different view based on the design quality of the duplex and the streetscape improvements. In relation to council's other key concerns, which are fairly carefully laid out in the LPP report around privacy, solar access and private open space, we do remain of the opinion that the proposal, based on its orientation and the constraints of the site, address these concerns. Notwithstanding council's recommendation, we ask the panel to actually support this application by granting of consent for the proposal. Mr. Chairman, that's really all I think I need to say in relation to this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the panel?
No.
No questions.
No questions from Mike Ryan. I'm getting a nod, getting a shake from others. Is that right? No questions.
Yeah, no questions.
When what's no? Okay. Look, I'm interested just as a summary. So I've read through clause 4.6, but the better environmental outcome you're suggesting is achieved by the excess and the FSR. Not that that's a required test under, initial action for the objectives of clause 4.6, but it seems like the arguments were about providing greater housing choice, diversity and affordability. I'm just trying to get a sense from your point of view what the core of your argument and why it's a better planning outcome, or what the sound environmental planning reasons are for the FSR. Design quality, you feel? Just asking, for you to summarise that position. So I'm clear.
Mr. Chairman, we face this problem regularly when we seek variations, particularly to heighten FSR. It is a conundrum because there are circumstances where designs such as this one, in order to achieve what we think is a better outcome for the site in terms of livability, amenity, and meeting market expectations, there is inevitably going to be some degree of variation to, more often than not, to floor space ratio. And I think there has not been many applications in recent times where we have sought to vary this to some degree or another in order to achieve what we think is a much better or more satisfactory outcome in terms of the way these units operate, the way they lay out, and the amenity of these units. It is difficult because market expectations now are much different to what they were 5 or 6 years ago, and we try to accommodate that in better design outcomes. That simply and often just leads to the fact that we do sometimes exceed FSR, and as a result, we are required to put in the clause 4.6 variations. It is interesting to note that the previous approval for this site was a fully compliant development. It has since lapsed, but when my clients analysed that design outcome and the approval, it simply did not meet market expectations, and that application was not acted on, and that hence prompted them to look at this revised application, which we felt better suited the current market expectations. And that included the rooftop terrace, which we eventually eliminated at Council's request. They were very adamant about rooftop terraces. We don't get any traction at all when we try to provide these, even when we can demonstrate that we have adequate screening and that we've made provisions for overlooking. So yes, it is a constant issue for us in the industry in justifying access to FSR. And it is a constant challenge to be able to provide a satisfactory clause 4.6.
So does that mean in your mind you believe that market expectations or desires should take precedence over the planning controls? Is that the basis of your view? Or
not necessarily, but unfortunately the way the market is going, that is where it's pushing us. And that may be a reflection on whether or not the FSR controls in the LEP are adequate. There's always this debate as to whether it should be 0.5, 0.6 or 0.7 for certain zonings in order to get suitable outcomes for medium density sites. My view is that the FSR is too low. There are some that may argue that it wouldn't matter what FSR we gave you, you'd still try to push the envelope. I acknowledge that is always a challenge, but I think consistently over the last few years, we've just found meeting the current floor space ratio controls and getting a decent outcome for multi-unit development is getting increasingly difficult.
because of the disparity between the medium density zone and the FSR as opposed to low density and FSR? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Exactly. Yes, correct.
I mean, because the counter argument, of course, is, well, you know, you just need a bigger site if you need more floor space in the market. You know what I mean? Well, the site's not suitable because the trouble with that line of argument is then, you know, you can shoehorn market expectations and desires into any site. You know, everyone wants a higher building with a view over someone else's roof, so buildings just get bigger and bigger until you can see the ocean.
It is a challenge, and we acknowledge that, but I do believe that, particularly with changing demographics in our local area, where we're getting a lot of Sydney families coming up onto the peninsula and the Central Coast, their expectations are quite different to our traditional market, which had been your self-funded retirees. And that's resulted in a different product. And we're trying to accommodate that.
Yeah. But I guess there's also an argument for medium density housing if there's a belief amongst the community or parts of the community that there's a disparity between the objectives of trying to get medium density housing, the FSR to deliver it, then that's probably best varied through the LEP and the controls themselves rather than through individual DAs. I guess there's always that point of view as well.
I would love to be able to go back and revisit that, but the Central Coast LEP took 10 years to revise and update, and I don't think anybody wants to go down that rabbit hole anytime soon.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks. That was enlightening for me. Thanks. Any other questions, follow up for that?
No.
Okay, I don't think there's any other speakers on that, so we will close the discussion on that. Thanks, Mr. Wales, and we'll move to the third item, which is the Everglades Country Club at 1 Dunbarn Road, Woy Woy. Here, our usual procedure, we hear from speakers against the recommendation or who live around developments, and then the opponent last, who may also respond to points that have been raised or other submissions. So I have Karen Patching. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly.
Perfect.
Thanks, Karen. We're all ears.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I have a few notes that I'd like to read out, and hopefully I'm not asking too many questions, which you mentioned at the beginning. Sorry about that. I have so many questions. I have to wonder if the club have considered any of the surrounding residents and how much the new building will impact on our day-to-day lives. The proximity of the new building is very close to our private space, particularly mine. It's actually right next door to me, like right next door, a metre or something. I note that there has been a sound monitor test done, and the results showed that it was under the acceptable level. It was a surprisingly quiet time of the week and testing being done with the noise level almost at 0. I have to wonder, was this a bit of a coincidence? But who knows? The golfers on any weekend can be quite inconsiderate when meeting up at 6 a.m. with their loud chatter. I mean, I do get that people are playing golf and it's excellent and having fun, but on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m, it's not so great when you're jumping out of bed. The constant beeping of the reversing golf carts going all day long can send a human insane. You know, when a golf cart reverses and it's that beep and it's just a really long beep, it goes all day long. It's a nightmare. The sound of the front doorbell chiming every single time golfers come in. So when a golfer comes in, I don't know if you play golf, but when a golfer comes in, it goes past this little beeper and it's a doorbell and it just goes ding, ding, and it just goes ding, ding all day long. So that's another thing. And that'll, with this new build, which is going to be close, will just bring it so much closer and make it more often. The maintenance team start up their machinery well before the legal time of 7 a.m. So whether or not this is going to change, I'm not too sure, but the machinery will be in this new building. So that means, yes, they're going to be accessing it earlier. And honestly, it is way before 7 a.m. So, and I've taken note of that. They also, the bowling club also put up a playground, and it's a 3-story playground. It's massive. It's got sort of a cover over it, but when the kids scream, and I'm not saying fun screaming, it's horrendous screaming, it just hits off the sides and it bounces back over sort of to my way. It's hard to explain, but anyway. So that might be blocked by the building. I'm not sure, but that's very close as well. So these things go on and off all day long. So it's not, this isn't just a one-off. The building, I don't know if anyone's seen the plans, but where the building, the pro shop is going, it's so close to my unit, and I'm not sure what the legal, I mean, obviously it's got to be legal for it to be passed, but it's very close to my back deck. So I'm not...
Can I just interrupt? Sorry, that was 3 minutes up.
Oh, sorry, Lacey.
No, you're right. You're at 5. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Can I keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
Sorry, babbling on. Yeah, I'm just a bit concerned that it's so close. Obviously it's legal, but I'm not sure about that one. That one bothers me because it is very, very close to me. I'm just also a bit concerned about the whole thing about the noise. I have to shut all my doors in the afternoon so that I can get peace and quiet. So My concern I have to ask you is why can it be relocated somewhere else, perhaps in the car park? There's a car park there as well, which is near the pro shop now. That's my question. Finished. I've got many more, but I won't take up your day or be a pain.
That's okay. I'm sure there might be some questions from panel members anyway, so you might be able to
Mhm.
elaborate in response anyway. I guess I've got to look. I might just kick it off since I've got unmuted myself. We did have a look at your layout. So just so in terms of, because we were interested in the relationship of the proposed building and your site and your unit. And it looked like from the plans we saw anyway, that there was a kitchen and a living room that faced the current shed where the new pro shop is proposed to be going.
Yeah,
and
that's
then a
me.
fairly minimal setback of about a metre. There was, I think, to the left of that, there's a water tank, and then upstairs, the first floor seemed a bit further set back, and then there's I think 4 windows. There's windows to a void area that's to the lower area, and then there's central bathroom. Is that right? Is that the layout how it is?
That's not my unit. That's actually the unit next door. So I'm just a tiny one at the front that's just single story.
Oh, okay. Right, okay. We'll have a look at the layout of that.
Yeah.
Okay, and the ding dong you're talking about, that's the ding dong to the pro shop, not the shed next to you, is that right? Or
No, it must be. Yeah, it must allow the pro shop where it is now, let them know that golfers have come in or finished for the day, because every time someone goes past it, it goes like a ding dong door chime.
Not into the pro shop, just walking past it.
Yeah, so whoever walks past it. So imagining they're monitoring people, that have come in from their last game or something. I'm not sure. I just don't know. It's just annoying.
Right. And I think we suggested council staff it might be good to have the applicant and the applicant's noise person here in case we had any questions about that. So they might respond to some of the comments you've made. But look, generally, I'd make the observation if noise measurements are done in a quiet period, usually the way noise measurements are, then they measure the background noise. So it's probably a penalty if it's quiet, because then they've got a stricter noise criteria to comply with. But I am interested in the construction and in the wall next to you, which we'll ask the applicant later on. Other questions from panel members of Ms. Patching?
Yeah. Hello, Karen. I just wanted to understand if you've talked to the club about some of these matters and what responses, if you've had any.
We actually had a meeting with one of the gentlemen there who's now not with them anymore, Shane, I can't remember his name. It was of the bowling club, because it was initially the 3-story children's playground, and they promised that they would reduce the hours of play from 7:30 in daylight saving. No, 8 o'clock daylight saving, 7:30 not daylight saving, but that's not happening because I've been monitoring that. Sometimes it's well into 9 o'clock. With regards to the actual golf course and the maintenance, I've sent emails, but they don't answer. None of us have had returns from emails. So, and I'm sending it to the correct email address, so we don't have any answers on that one.
Okay, thank you.
So I have tried quite a few times to sort of, I don't know, just get some sort of, look, I get at the end of the day, it's a golf course and I love that people are having the best fun, but when it just is a constant flow of noise, and this building might just make it even more so, like it'll just tenfold the noise. So that's just my concern. And because I'm so close, does anyone know what the legal closeness is to a private residence?
I said it's not a question and answer question.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Council staff might respond later. But they're proposing the same setback as now. I'm interested in that building that's there now, and I'll ask the applicant the same question when they start their address. But what's your understanding of what that current shed that exists 950 mils from your boundary currently? What's that used for in your understanding?
People meet, there's a little bit at the front that people meet and have a bit of a chat with. And then around because I have walked past it, it's all the maintenance stuff, the guys that have the big tractors and the lawn mowing and all of that is kept in there. Yeah. And then the guys meet up. No, the carts are over in the pro shop.
Pro shop, right.
Yeah.
So it's just all the big equipment to sort of mow. Right, okay. Right. And don't take this the wrong way, or I don't
No.
want to sound cold-hearted, but what do you say about the view that, look, it's fairly recent development, so whoever lives there has chosen to move in next to a golf course, and starting at 6
definitely.
a.m. is pretty normal, and there's a pathway that's not changed. It goes right to the first hole, and that's where people are going to. So, you could have potentially foreseen there'd be some level of impact. What do you say about
Sure. No, do you know what? It was actually a draw card, to tell you the truth. I actually like the back deck and the outlook and the golfers, and I have no problem with that. I'm guessing it's more the playground that was erected,
Right.
which I did actually ask about, and apparently it's quite legal that they're
Right.
allowed to have that, which I found surprising. So that was sort of the start of it. But then, of course, it started with the maintenance stuff, and then the beeping. And now what bothers me now is with this new build, it'll get worse. So I actually don't mind the sound of the golfers and
the outlook you enjoy, but it's
I actually love that. But if you're going to build a dirty big building right next to me, that's not going to be so beautiful.
Is there any potential of that building, if it's better noise attenuated than the current tin sheds, that there might be some noise
Reduction.
amelioration or reduction because it'll be between you and the play area? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Someone mentioned that, but I'm not sure how high. I'm not very good with heights and things like that as to how high the pitch of the roof will be. But most definitely, I would say that might help. Take that away. I'm not too sure. I'm not too technical on that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions before we move on to the applicant?
Yeah, can I just a couple of points of clarification? Just looking at an aerial view of the site, you're in one of the single dwellings.
Yes.
Are you closest to the practice green, or are you at the other end up near the road?
No, I'm up near the practice green, right where the shop will be.
Near. Okay.
Right there.
And that's why you hear there's very little buffer or barrier there, so that's why you hear the chatter.
Yeah.
And then the noise from the carts, you're hearing that from its current location.
Yeah, which is over in the pro
which is
shop,
further away. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be constant flow.
Yeah. No, I'd be very interested to hear the applicant's responses to all those issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any last questions, Karen Patchy? No. Okay. So for the applicant, in whichever order you wish, I think we've got Brent Fitzpatrick and Robin Heaton. And whichever order you address, if you can let us know what capacity or expertise or role you have with the application, that would be helpful.
Yeah, hi, my name's Brent. I'm the architect from Fabric Architecture here on the coast, and the applicant. And we've got Robin, who is the acoustic engineer from Muller Consulting, and I'll let him talk about sort of acoustic and noise actuations that we've sort of implemented in a second. I'd like to just address a few of the things that have been raised. First off, there's quite a few, I suppose. So the existing building houses an existing bag store, which includes push carts, scooters, and their bags, and that's what's at the front of the site, probably closest to you, Karen. It houses the existing bowl sheds, existing greenskeeper sheds, and maintenance. So we already have tractors, all different types of machinery for greenskeepers for the bowls and for the golf club. And the western boundary actually has an existing reduced setback. So I think there's about a 600 mil setback on the existing building, which is built out of Hebel. So it's a fireproof wall. The developer that did the units that have been built in 2018, 2019, there's only a 1.8 meter high lap and cap wall that was being built around that. So, that developer could have done more to help with any kind of noise. So it could have been a higher noise actuating wall. That we can sort of talk about that later, I suppose. The intent for the new build is just to almost replace what's there. So we're not even changing the use. It is getting larger. The greenskeeper stays, the bowls stays, the maintenance shed stays. That's all existing use. The bag cart stays. What we're trying to do is relocate the pro shop and the cart store into this building, and also provide an amenity structure, so an outdoor toilet and things for both bowlers and and golfers, so they don't have to come into the club all the time. By virtue of just the building getting bigger, wider, it also means the ridge height gets higher. So the existing ridge is around 3 metres off the ground. The new one will be 5.96 metres, somewhere like that, off the natural ground. So again, by virtue of just the bigger building, it's going to have a bigger noise buffer to most of those units that are around. We have a 950 setback from the west. So it's slightly larger than the requirement. And the one to the north is about a 7 metre setback. And that's there because we're maintaining all the existing dirt store and water tanks that are on that northern boundary. The materiality of the new building is a mix of there was going to be a brick datum line and timber clad and some nice timber posts for the pro shop. So we're going to spend a little bit more money, dressing that up. And as it pared back, it was just trying to reduce cost, and it was going to be more of a steel kind of shed construction, so steel frame, a steel clad shed. Internally, it was going to be lined though with acoustic insulation to kind of help mitigate any noise getting out of the maintenance sheds and things like that. Then what else is there? It's probably about it. Yeah, we weren't the previous architects for the cabanas and the play. That was under another architect firm, which I believe has been under another DA that did get approved. So it all went through the right channels. The car park that was mentioned isn't owned by the club. I believe that's leased and it's a council-owned asset. And the doorbell I can't comment on, but that's something we could probably speak to the club about what that is and how to mitigate that if we move the pro shop into the new building. But I might hand over now, because I know of cautious of time, I might hand over to Robin just to speak through the noise and the monitoring that we've done.
Hi guys, thanks for your time. Just a couple of points of clarification on some of the stuff that was mentioned by Karen and by the chair. The noise monitoring that was undertaken was to set noise criteria. So Karen mentioned it was actually surprisingly quiet. So the process is the noise is monitored and then the criteria is developed on the background noise levels measured. So the fact that it was actually quieter, as Karen said, actually results in a much more stringent criteria. All the results in the report that was presented to council for a review were predicted noise models. So that we actually imported sources from into a model and actually predicted in the noise, taking into account height of the buildings, attenuation to the distance, orientation of the receiver points, and many other factors like that. So just want to clarify that that's the process, and that it being quiet when we monitor it doesn't actually mean that we're trying to hide noise. As Brent said, the building is much higher, and that will result in a much higher noise barrier by the building itself. And with the orientation of where the axis is for the golf carts, that should hopefully reduce all the noise from carts maneuvering and banging to all the receivers to the west, which is what we showed in the modelling. We acknowledge that the playground is there and the cabanas are there, and as Brent mentioned, that's under a different DA. That wasn't considered as part of this development application or this noise assessment. However, again, the higher building will obviously act as a better barrier for a lot of those noise sources to those receivers as well. So it is, a benefit to Karen and to the other residents in the area. As well, where we're locating the pro shop, that is out the front. There will be, that existing noise barrier there as well. We did model patrons, as we call them, or people talking out there. And again, everything was demonstrated to be compliant. With regard to internal noises, machinery and plant that are already existing will actually be quieter because, as Brent mentioned, the overall building is going to be improved with, a clad shed, and then some acoustic treatments, and then lined internally as well. So that will also hopefully reduce the overall noise effect to those receivers. So pretty much some kind of clarifies everything. Happy if Brent has anything extra to add.
No, thanks, Robin. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Happy to.
I might just kick off if that's okay. So I've read through your noise report because I was looking at the plans and it was fairly basic in terms of the detail there of what type of materials the walls and ceilings were, and I was looking for an assumption in your acoustic report in your noise modelling and estimating what assumption you might have made about the type of construction. But can you tell me what you had assumed the walls and ceilings would be, or were there specific recommendations you made that I might have missed about the acoustic treatment of those walls and ceilings of the shed?
No, there was no particular acoustic treatments mentioned, or as per the site design. The internal noise would be generally insignificant compared to the external sources like the patrons and that talking, which was what we kind of concentrated on the mechanical plant, and that to the surrounding receivers.
Right. So that wasn't a critical issue in your mind because it was going to be more noise attenuated than people making noise.
Yes, correct. Yeah, the existing internal use will be reduced, and as we said, it's internal, and it's once the noise is attenuated through the walls, shouldn't be audible at the.
But it's depending on the way it's treated, might help buffer some pre-existing noise, whether it's from the playground.
Correct. Yeah, the building, the new building should be superior to the old design, which was basically a tin shed.
So then, can I ask you, Brent, what the intended materiality and noise the treatment of the walls and the ceiling in the new shed are, both to the west, east, and east?
Yeah, so internally, I suppose we've got there's a large portion of it that will be lined with acoustic treatment and plasterboard. Then when it gets to machinery sort of stores, we're going to line it with FC. So that an acoustic treatment and an FC internally. So we still have that wall system. Externally, it was all going to be clad in a steel sheet, like a ColourBond product.
Yeah, that's what I thought I saw. So just talk me through the section, say, of the western wall that's closest to your neighbour. So talk me through what that would look like in cross section. You've got an outer metal
cladding.
Yeah.
And then there'd be a steel frame which would have insulation in it, and then an FC sheet on the internal lining.
Right. And that insulation sheet would be thermal insulation or acoustic or both?
It would be a mix of both. Yeah, it'd act as both.
And would you have any issue with requiring there to be some acoustic attenuation of that western wall and the ceiling?
No, I don't mind looking into it. I spoke to Robin earlier about, if we upgraded that fence, but that wouldn't have any impact on the noise modelling because it's already hidden by the building. That's what's doing a lot of the the noise capturing, I suppose, from patrons.
Right.
But we haven't addressed, I suppose, I didn't realise, well, it's not part of our scope in one sense. That
No, it's not part of your DA, the playground, but I'm just, there will be machines and carts moving around, so you would want to try and keep the internal noise down, I would think, as much as you can.
Yeah.
The external use of those machines is an existing use, so then the internal kind of movement of them will be within a better shed, which will ultimately reduce the noise to the neighbours.
Yeah.
So the golf course has been there from, I believe, 1957, if I'm not mistaken. So, machinery has been working on that site since then. So the DA didn't consider the mechanical plant, maintaining the course itself, because that's, as we said, outside the scope of this DA.
Yeah. That's sort of reasonable, this thing. If you're putting in a new building, you have to sort of thermally insulate it, then the additional cost of adding in some extra acoustic shielding, if it addresses pre-existing issues, might seem to be reasonable. That's all I'm asking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the acoustic performance of a wall, it's kind of steel cladding with then kind of internal insulation fill, and then fibre cement is quite good. Okay. You wouldn't need anything on top of that because I guess the air and the thermal insulation will act as another barrier between. Correct. And we also have loss for reverberation in the space, and then as well, the machines tend to be more idling than actually at a high rev when they're kind of just being maneuvered into for storage. They're not actually under a huge kind of power rating. And
in terms of, even though I said we weren't taking questions, but just to try and paint a picture for your neighbour, my reading of your plans is you've got it's sort of 3 metre side walls, which is about 1 story, and then you've got a pitched roof that meets in the middle that goes up to 5.6. As you say, because it's wider and bigger, it's taller than it is now. But in terms of the wall next to your western neighbour and Miss Patching and others, then that's essentially 1 story, 3 metres high, and then the extra height that goes up to 5.6 is the pitched metal roof. That's right, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions? That's it from me.
Yeah, I've got a few, if I may, Mr.
Sure,
Chair.
Mr. Watts. Go.
My question is, you're saying that the equipment's going to be stored there, but I'm looking at the plans here. It says pro shop, cart shop, bag store, cart store, bowl shed, amenities. So where is the mowers and equipment being stored? If you're demolishing the whole place, where is all this going to be stored now?
So yeah, it is getting reduced down to the bowl shed. So that's further away.
So everything at the moment, all the mowers and that, they won't be in this new building at all.
No, only what they need for the bowls club, that stays in the bowl shed. So which is probably smaller plant than what's there now.
Absolutely, yep. So all the existing big tractor mowers that were in there now are going somewhere else. So that noise won't be there anymore. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, correct.
Well, that's a win there. My question about the noise. You've said you've taken into account patrons, but at the moment, from the existing pro shop to the new pro shop is what, 20 something meters? So people would now congregate out the front of the existing shop, but they're going to go to the new shop. So how did you work out how many people will be at the new shop out the front? Because as a golfer, I'm a golfer. As a golfer, you go to your pro shop, you get your cart, you get your drink and stuff, and you chat to your friends, then you go off. So they're now going to do it in the front of the new pro shop, which is right out the front of the yard. So how did you account for that?
Well, I'll leave Robin to answer that little question, but there's a first part of that though, that the existing tee off, like the existing first tee and where all the carts are stored in that same location. So where we have that kind of new cart bay, that's just us cutting in and trying to form up a cart bay, but that's where they currently line up all the carts ready for the day anyway. So that use again isn't changing to currently, but yeah, you're right. Obviously there's going to be some congregation outside the pro shop. They're trying to, the club are aware of it and they're trying to mitigate that. And, they've sent out letters apparently to their golfers, and they're not permitted to congregate around the first tee prior to tee off. They've let me know, which is tee off is 6:30 in summer and 7 a.m. in winter. So there'll be that's I guess an operational kind of thing. We haven't looked at upgrading that fence line on that southern sort of boundary though. I don't know what that's made out of, looks like it wraps around Karen's fence. So there might be some noise, noise sort of something we could do there. But Robin, I'll let you speak about calculating of patrons and noise and things out the front.
Yeah. So first of all, I should point out that patrons actually fall outside the scope of the noise policy for industry, which is the governing body for most developments like this. But I have included two groups of patrons outside the pro shop, which is a total of 8 people talking at any one time, which I think would be, fairly representative of a group teeing off. We do have I'm not an avid golfer myself, but we do have quite a few golfers in the office, and we kind of had a chat, and they said, you wouldn't have that many people congregating right then at any one time, and people kind of get their gear, as you mentioned, Glenn, get their whatever they are from the pro shop, and then head to the tee and start heading out themselves. So I felt 8 people there at any one time. I also have all 8 people talking at any one time, which was, I don't know if when you think of a conversation, everyone talks at one time would not be representative, because then no one's really communicating. So, if you have, 8 people talking, that could be representative of quite a bit of a larger group that are there as well. So again, it's quite a conservative approach to the modeling as well that way.
Excellent. Thank you. That answers that question for me.
Can I just say one thing about probably the design of the internal of the pro shop? It is an upgrade from the existing pro shop that's there. So the existing pro shop is sort of a bit detached. There is a tech center, which is where, there's a VR machine where they can train people on how to swing, and there's a pro shop. And then there's also the cart store, which is opened by big roller doors. So this pro shop's going to have obviously auto sliding doors on it. So they probably won't need for this sort of buzzer system. If the buzzer system is what's triggering, it is the people coming and going from the pro shop. It's probably because that's more of an open plan, and the staff probably can't see people coming into the pro shop from trying to manage all different spaces, where this is a more consolidated space. And with auto doors, you probably won't, there'll be better sight lines for staffing, and you won't need that. So there won't be any sort of buzzers or anything like that when people come into the store.
Because they're auto doors and you don't have them in auto doors. You just stand there and they open. So
they just stand there and open, yeah. So
Right.
yeah, and there's better, like our point of sale is right at the front there of those auto doors. There'll be better sight lines throughout the shop, whereas currently it's a bit disjointed.
Right. And can I just ask, with the opening hours, I was just having a look at the recommendation that's before us in the assessment report. It talks about the hours of operation of the retail golf shop, access to the golf cart and bag storage area, the bowls office and the greenkeeping are permitted between 6 a.m. and 10. So I'm just trying to reconcile. So just trying to work out how it works at the moment. So you mentioned 6:30 and 7, and then the hours of operation, the recommended conditions talk about 6. So what happens? I guess can you just clarify what those 6:30 and 7 hours were that you mentioned before?
Well, that's the club's preference of tee-off times. So that's when the first tee-off will be.
Right, but people might get there, of course, beforehand and, get their scorecards and order their Mars bar and their drink and have a chat before they start. So that happens at 6, usually half an hour or 45 before they tee off, I imagine. Yeah,
I'd assume so. So we weren't seeking to change the already approved hours, yeah.
Yeah, right, okay.
And just the reason I have said, sorry to interject, the reason I've said 6 a.m. is because we measure the noise in 15-minute periods, but typically when we're doing an assessment, you treat it we treat it. I could have said 6:30, but I went with 6 a.m. just to be conservative, because then that just ultimately looks at the overall hour between 6 and 7 as a criteria, rather than just the half hour, which might be slightly louder.
Yeah. And confirm in terms of the setback, which was one of the questions. So at the moment, the setback of that shed is 950 mils, and that's proposed to be 950 mils. So it's the same setback as the existing shed. Is that right?
I feel like we don't have no. Well, the proposal is for 950.
Yeah.
But I feel like the existing setback is a lot less.
But look, I mean, in your demolition plan, it looked like it was almost on the boundary, but I wasn't sure if that was accurate or not. So you're saying it's further away from the boundary than the current shed?
Correct. Yeah. Because I noticed that when I went in there for one of our first meetings, it's built out of Hebel, that whole wall, because it's obviously encroached on a side setback, so it's got fire separation issues. So that's probably why.
Oh, is it? Right. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And if there was approval to be granted, would there be any concern with the condition that said there'd be no entry bells or whistles or alarms for people entering? That wouldn't be an issue for you. You said it's not proposed.
No.
Would it be suggested, Jason, that a broadband alarm be used, which is more of a kind of a duck quack, which is wouldn't be chiming, so it's audible, but the noise from those doesn't carry as far. So therefore, hopefully, it would be audible then within the pro shop, and then maybe.
Or we could do it if the panelists mind that we haven't made a decision yet. But if there were something that said if there is to be any alarm, then it'd be configured and designed so it doesn't cause a noise impact to neighbours. If one's needed at all, I guess.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I do. Robin, I understand. I'm looking at an aerial view shot of the location.
Yep.
I accept that the new building, and if what Brent says, it's going to be slightly further off the boundary, that's one tick. It's going to be a longer building. It's going to be a new building with different types of insulation. It's going to be higher. But as I understand it, Karen's unit is immediately adjoining the practice green. And looking at she's very open and very exposed in a southeasterly direction, meaning that her adjoining units, those that go further up north towards the bowling green, they'll obviously have a block building. But did you consider, or could you consider any form of mitigation measures that could be done either to the fence or, I don't know, at that opening? And that's obviously why she hears a lot of chatter. At 6 o'clock in the morning, she hears the quick quack of the bell, she hears the carts and the like. If you go to I don't know if you got access to it, but if you look at an aerial view shot of where her unit is, yes, part of it faces straight onto the new building that the club's building, but also it's open and exposed to that practice green. Is that something that you could look at in terms of just trying to dampen any noise coming in from that direction?
We have the existing wall that is there modeled. We had one of the guys that was there when they inspected and said the fence was there, and we modeled what's existing in place still. And
Right.
you know, we demonstrate we're compliant with what is existing. If you know, obviously there is an opportunity to increase that fence height, but then that could create like we don't do that unless it's very much required because it can create overshadowing or anything like that. You know, there definitely is, like, you know, as you mentioned, opportunity to increase that height, and that would increase the attenuation to Karen's property. But that would be mainly, as you said, her property is open to the putting green and the training green, which is an existing use, then outside the scope of what the DA kind of addresses.
Yes.
So
because I understand it's compliant, and that's fine. But I always sometimes have had instances in the past where you go a little bit beyond compliance, and just those minor mitigation measures may be enough to dampen.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from.
Complies, but is that something that you could look at, or could you explain to us now what could be done to above compliant levels to
is
the
it
height of the
just,
fence, or
just a timber lap and cap fence at the minute, Karen? Can I just ask you? It is, yeah. So Robin, if it was changed from a timber lap and cap to, say, a modular wall kind of fence at the same height, would that? I know I'm asking you on the spot, but would that have a decent impact on sound?
Probably wouldn't, because it's the material you're changing, and both those materials would probably be well in advance of 10 kilograms per meter squared, which is what kind of deadens the noise. We'd have to look at going higher in height. And again, as I said, it would kind of depend what we're trying to attenuate the noise from. As I said, we've looked at the new pro shop and the new sheds, and people congregating outside that. If we're trying to mitigate noise from the putting green and existing uses, I would have to unfortunately do a little bit of calculation and modelling to work out, but ultimately it would mean a higher fence. And then, we don't recommend changing something unless it's very much required. Mike was saying about going a little bit further to get further compliance, and to get a further reduction in attenuation. It's definitely something we can look into. But we probably need clarification on what you're looking to address, because as I said, when I was engaged through this assessment of the sheds and stuff.
No, I fully understand all that. No,
but there's definitely improvements to be,
But there are, okay, so there's scope for that. So what's the height of the fence that's there now? Does anyone tell me?
I was told at 2.1, but I'm not sure if that's right.
Yeah, we've modeled a 2 meter fence.
I can jump in there. It's conditioned for a 2.2 meter lapped and capped fence.
2.2 meter lapped and capped conditioned.
Yeah. One of my colleagues measured it when I was there. He did have difficulty because there's quite a large hedge there as well, but he said he got about between 2 and 2 meter, or 2 meters and 2.1. And again, he was going from a garden bed, so level of soil can have a little bit of variance. So,
and in your experience, going from 2 to 2.4 meters, can that have significant changes?
With the noise barrier, the height of the barrier and relative height of the receiver and source are several factors, but then the distance from the receiver to the barrier and the distance from the source to the barrier are the major factors as well.
Right. Okay.
If we're looking to attenuate the noise from, say, the practice green, you probably would get better a marginal increase of dB or 2 from that. And you would definitely improve the amenity from the people congregating outside the pro shop. So the exact reduction, I'd have to do some modeling.
I understand.
But they're like 0.4 is a decent increase in barrier, and would probably give us a few dB, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I do. Hi. I mean, I just wonder whether there's another way to look at the design of it. I mean, is it possible that you could have the pro shop actually opening out onto, like, as in towards the playground? I understand you'd want some sort of window to be able to see that people are coming in off the greens. But if the door faced the other way, then that would tend to make people congregate there as well. I mean, maybe you make it harder to get the carts up that way. and there's it directs them in another direction. At the moment, the design seems to really encourage people to congregate there. So I just wonder what else could be done to stop people congregating there.
Yeah,
I mean, could you swap the cart store and the pro shop? I don't know. I guess you want to be able to look at the greens, I'm imagining, though.
Yeah, we're just trying to create a connection to the greens, to the pro shop, so they can look out and they can see people teeing off, tee off times, people picking up carts. And that's why there's kind of like this undercover, almost, porta cochere sort of scenario where at least if it is raining, they can get in carts, get out of carts, hook up their bags and things in a covered sort of space, which the club doesn't have now or offer now.
Where does that occur? Sorry, the porta cochere, where does that occur?
There's the roof that comes out over there. So if you're looking on the plan, you can see the dash.
Yeah, I've only got the floor plan here at the
Yeah,
moment.
you can sort of see where it would go over towards the green. That's all roofed area. So again, that has a noise reduction element to it as well. Obviously, it's going to capture any sound going out further because it is under a roof. But yeah, it's just.
But even if we were just talking to the fence we were just talking about. Like, is there a way of having something from that far corner of the pro shop, like the top left corner?
Yeah.
Is there a chance to put some sort of fence there that's not actually right against Karen's property, but it still has the same noise effect? Then you wouldn't have overshadowing issues.
Possibly, yeah. I'd have to go out on site and have a look at it, and there could be a noise barrier, like a little L-shaped noise barrier that links back up to that boundary fence, like the western boundary fence, and then comes out and follows the angle of the southern fence.
I mean, and do you think that you could have the shop opening another way? Like I said, I understand you still need to be able to see, but you could do that with windows without actually having the door there.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I could possibly mirror elements of the shop to get it in, and that would get people further away from Karen's, that sort of southwestern boundary.
And sorry, can you also clarify? I'm still a bit confused about what's in these sheds. So you said the maintenance equipment. It was, first of all, you said it was in these sheds, but now we're told that it's not in these sheds. But where does it go?
In the bowling shed. So the bowling shed, which is the
It's not very big.
Sorry?
What about tractors and that for the golf course?
No, I believe they're getting moved to, there's already another maintenance shed on the property.
But surely that should form part of this DA then, should it? Or
no, it's already an existing shed. It's down.
Yeah, I know, but you're moving your noise source. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to understand where they're going to.
If it's an existing use of an existing kind of element of this facility, you wouldn't need to do a DA because they're just optimizing their usage.
Yeah, there's already an existing maintenance shed on other parts of the course.
But could you tell us where that is, though? I'm not trying to trap you. I'm just trying to understand. Maybe it's better because we're moving the maintenance equipment, but I don't know where it's going to.
Yeah, we can clarify that via email, though, I think.
Okay. So and another question I had is about, I guess, the operating hours. I mean, there's also the playground issue, which I know that's not forming part of this, but that's obviously causing a lot of angst. What the operating hours of the playground are? I wonder if someone could talk to that.
No, I'm not across that information. Like I said, it was part of a pre-approved DA that wasn't us. So.
Okay, so we don't have the applicant that can answer that.
No representative of the club is here.
Okay.
Sorry, can I interrupt? Sorry.
I'll let Jason make that decision.
Usually not, no. Look, I think it's fair to say it's not part of the scope of this application. If the answer is available, that's good. If it's not, it's not.
No, sorry, don't have the answer.
I guess I was just trying to get some sort of understanding about whether the club's been proactive with managing noise, whether there's a history of that. I mean, we're discussing noise a lot and we're considering controls that might reduce it. And I'm just wondering if that, the club has tried to do this in the past proactively, that's all.
No, they haven't.
Yeah, okay. Well, from the information I have, they have. They've said that they've, they've advised the golfers they're not permitted to congregate, like I said before, around the first tee. Children aren't permitted in the club after the hours of 9 o'clock, and the playground apparently gets shut down earlier than that. That's the information I have.
Okay, that's all right. We can maybe follow it up.
And sorry,
Thanks,
just to respond to your statement about the noise, Stacey. A lot of what has been discussed is actually pre-existing use of the golf course, and I've been asked to kind of give an opinion on that. As such, the development application was for the pro shop, and as I stated, as it's slightly higher than the existing sheds, that will hopefully mitigate more noise from the playground. As I said a while ago, the distance between the source and the barrier, and then the receiver and the barrier, it was major kind of player in how it attenuates noise. As the pro shop is slightly closer to the to where the kids are playing, and then the barrier height as well, that should hopefully provide more attenuation to that, if that's any solace.
No, I understand that. Thank you. I guess I'm just trying to find a win-win, I suppose, that we can improve something.
If it does help, I can ask the club for a list of, what exact plant and machinery is going to go in the bowl shed, and respond back to Amy.
So Robin, is there any, did you say before that the western wall of that existing shed is Hebel block, probably because of fire rating? And that's going to metal insulation and fibre cement. So is there any chance that there'll be more noise generated from the movement of vehicles within the shed and carts than there might be at the moment to the neighbours? You see that as a potential issue or not?
Sorry, you said the western wall was Hebel, was it?
Well, I don't know. Did you say that, Brent? I thought.
No, I said that. Yeah, the current wall of some of those sheds is a Hebel cladding on a steel
to the full height of the soffit to the roof. Right.
Yeah, okay. But not lined internally. There's no insulation or lining internally. It's just a steel shed.
Right, but it's a Hebel block wall.
It's a Hebel, panel wall. I think it was. Yeah.
Right. So if that's the case, Robin, is there any potential? I mean, I guess it gets back to my question: would it be reasonable to try and provide some? I get your response earlier, and I have listened to it. I understand what you're saying. The real noise source comes from the people outside making noise, and not the internals. But I guess I'm a bit like others, seeing if there's a reasonable way to address potential noise of movement of a lot of vehicles at the end of the day, or around within a building, and also between an existing play area.
I'd be happy to clad that wall. If it's easier, I'd be happy to clad that north and that western wall in a Hebel panel and still insulate it and line it internally. It's not going to add a whole lot of cost to the club.
Yeah, okay. Have you got anything to say about that, Robin? Or
as well, the equipment is only stored in there. It's only started up and removed out and then heads out to the courses. So the period that it's actually in there is actually quite short. So
usually the beginning and end of the day, though, I guess that's when sometimes it gets a bit.
Yeah, and as you said, there is potential that it could be slightly louder. But given that once you start the machinery and drive it out, it's only going to be 1 or 2 minutes in a 15-minute period. So then, when it's duration adjusted, the noise level within the shed is actually quite low. So then the external noise source becomes the issue. And as we said, most of the heavy equipment is moving to another shed. Most of the equipment is being stored now in the bowl shed on the far side of the new development and away from it. So,
right,
yeah.
But you're open, Brent, to a Hebel blockwork or equivalent for the west and the north. Is that right?
Yeah, we could easily clad that in a Hebel panel, which is like I think a 20 or 400 sort of by 600 sort of size panel.
Yeah,
that to work, and it would only be installed on sort of the top hat system.
Yep. Okay. Other questions?
Can I ask another one?
Yep. Stacey. I only can say people's names for the voice recording, so if anyone,
Oh, Stacey.
No, you don't have to. I'm just explaining. That's why I sometimes say, just so people are listening, they know where the questions are coming from. That's all.
So another one for you, Robin. We're here to test you. So if it was enclosed, like if there was a roof that was on that eastern side, so we extended that out in that gap, would that help the sound, do you think?
Sorry, when you say the eastern side, in the kind of up between the
eastern
two...
side of the new building. So there's currently a gap, and then there's the cabanas and then the playground.
Yeah.
If that if that roof was extended out, so basically you didn't have the U down the bottom of the cabanas that went all the way across and it extended along, which would also, I'm assuming, encourage people to stand there when it was raining rather than out the other end if the other overhang to the south wasn't there. But do you think if you had that roof along the east, it would help with noise?
Sorry, just to clarify,
I assume that
Stacey,
it would sort of keep it under it.
you mean extending the roof of the eastern side of the U shape up to cover the cabanas? Is that what you're referring? Yeah,
not to the edge of the cabanas. You obviously can't cover the cabanas. But.
There is a roof there already, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, I'm not sure if I follow exactly what you're saying, but like
this means extend the eave, so like the roof pitch would change. So instead of where on the roof plan, if you're looking at the roof plan there, Robin, you can see like there's a white section between the building and the grey cabanas. So extend our roof out to meet the line of the cabanas. So effectively that pathway would all be covered.
Okay. Yeah, I follow now what you mean. Yeah, so that would ultimately just kind of cover any machinery and golf carts moving up that way. And that would definitely, and obviously, as I said, patrons as well, that would, definitely improve the acoustics. But as such as we've stated before, we've assessed the people out there externally without the roof, and it is compliant. So, my job is to, show compliance and, not to redesign the building and recommend.
No, that's all right. I'm just asking. That's
yeah.
I mean, that's our job to think about things like that. So
yeah.
And that could also help with the playground, I'm imagining.
May not help with the playground because of the orientation. It would depend on if the eave height or the truss height changes, and which would obviously then be something Brett would have to have a look at for us.
Yeah, well, it would make the roof pit, the ridge height higher because obviously the roof's getting wider.
Well, that's if you do continue the same. You could also do a flat thing at the edge of the roof.
Correct.
Then you design. Yeah.
But I don't know. It needs to be either or. I think having that overhang towards the south. Imagine, playing golf as well. That if there are three groups and waiting for hit-off times, they don't necessarily want to stand next to each other. So giving people some ability to get out of the rain and not be standing next to each other is not such a bad idea. So I don't know that you want to get rid of that southern thing, because that roofed area probably helps a bit of the noise containment as well.
But it could be an alternative, you think?
In
addition.
Yeah. Okay, other questions?
No, not for me.
No, okay, good. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I think we've fully explored that and understand different points of view, and the questioning, don't read too much into it. It's just helping our understanding and helping our thought process. We'll deliberate after the meeting's closed and come to a decision. And we'll publish that in the next few days with the voice recording as soon as we're able to. So thanks, everyone, for attending. I'll declare this part of the meeting closed at 3:25. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
And we have another meeting thing to book into, don't we? We're going to stay on this. Is that right?
We can stay or we can come back at 4 o'clock.
I wouldn't mind pushing on, but having a bit of a break. How's everyone else with having a 10?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
What about?
Sure. So 5 minutes, we'll come back.
Yeah, 10 minutes. So 3:25 now. So go 3:35.
3:35. See you then.
Jason, did you want both Amy and I to attend to? Did you have further questions, or what did you want to do?
Yeah, I'm hoping we can get it over pretty quick. If you could, that'd be good.
Okay, we'll see you in 5 minutes.
Yep.
We'll just stay on this link. Just leave it open.
Yeah, leave it open, I guess.
Okay. Good.
It's the same link if you want to hang up.
That's right. I'll leave it open. Thanks.
Just leave it open and turn the mute.
Sure. Okay. Bye.